My next guest has worked as a reporter at the Daily Wire for the past 6 months after joining them to write exclusively on transgender issues with an emphasis on paediatric gender medicine. Her aim was to provide serious coverage of what she has called a medical scandal. Last week, Christina Buttons publicly quit the publication due in part to the inflammatory rhetoric used by her fellow journalists and commentators, attracting aggressive backlash online. Joining me now is independent journalist Christina Buttons. Christina, thank you for your time. You're not a conservative political pundit. You came from the left. So what inspired you to take a role with the Daily Wire in the first place?
Well, I became a journalist last year when I was introduced to transgender issues and was horrified to realize that doctors are using a nonsense postmodern social theory as justification for medically transitioning people, including minors. And when I looked around and saw there wasn't really any objective and accurate reporting on it from the left, I began to write about it anywhere I could. I focused a lot on debunking a lot of the claims that were made by activists. And then my writing caught the attention of the Daily Wire, and they offered me a job writing exclusively on the issue.
And how bad is the situation? How bad is the case with kids in particular? Have the medical fraternity been completely compromised by the trans agenda and what the trans activists have been pushing?
Yeah, I would say so. I talk to a lot of detransitioners, and I think it's important to amplify their stories. They're all very similar cases. Many of them are young women who did not receive an autism diagnosis until adulthood. And it's bad. There's considerably more kids affected by it in blue states than in red states. And we need national change. We need to get the US-based medical organizations to conduct systematic reviews of the evidence, just as European countries like the UK and Sweden and Finland and recently Norway have.
Well, absolutely. There has been a shift in those Scandinavian countries, and we've seen shifts in the UK. But I know you don't agree with the approach of some of the Daily Wire's high-profile commentators like Matt Walsh, but he has been enormously successful in not only getting the message across, but also getting policy changes in Republican states anyhow. Do you think a gentler, more nuanced approach is going to be effective in those Democrat states, given that no matter how gentle the criticism is, it just has this unhinged response? You cannot question this narrative without just getting the most extraordinary backlash.
Yeah, I think he has a skill for invigorating a conservative base and rallying them around the issue. But I also see a lot of progress being made in blue states too. I mean, we had our first gender clinic whistleblower. We've had great reporting recently by left-wing outlets like the New York Times and Reuters. And, just the other day we had Hannah Barnes, who wrote the book on Tavistock, get interviewed by NPR. So I have to hope that, American medical associations are looking around at what's happening and are going to consider reviewing their policy on the affirmative care model.
You're right. We do see these pieces occasionally from the New York Times and NPR, but it's often a one-off against just a avalanche of pro-trans transitioning narrative. I do want to know what's going to happen with you next. You're a talented writer. What's going to happen next with your reporting on gender ideology?
Well, I'm currently trying to help a few members at the American Academy of Pediatrics introduce a new resolution this month to try to influence their policy on gender-affirming care. It involves getting better diagnostic criteria to detect girls on the autism spectrum and not, immediately affirming minors in their transgender identities, but conducting more thorough evaluations and getting each individual the treatment that is right for them. I mean, we have to start somewhere with these organizations that have been ideologically captured. I'm also writing a short book for parents on everything that they need to know about gender ideology.
Is it something that most parents are still largely ignorant about? We've seen a big uprising in parents who have been going to school boards and making their feelings known, but is the average parent out in the suburbs aware of how powerful this ideology is and how influential it has been in the culture and in schools?
I mean, I know that a lot of parents that I talk to in blue states are doing everything they can and trying to get people in their communities and at their kids' schools to see reason on this issue and not to see it as a partisan issue. I have to hope that we're making progress on it.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the world. Thank you so much for joining me, Christina.